Morning, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I'm Sean. Buxy's up in front. She's back. We found her. She took a day off yesterday, but she's back leading the charge this morning. I hope you are all happy and healthy doing the things that you love with those that you love doing them with. Please do me a favour, guys. Smash the like button for me. Smash the subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topic. Quick shout out to everyone that left comments on yesterday's video. A lot of the Celtic fans came in to reassure the Tottenham fans, who also said that they saw the same thing with his eye contact and lack of willingness to look people in the eye and look at the floor when answering questions. Celtic fans who are more experienced with Postecoglou came in and said, nothing to see here, pardon the pun. It is a part of his personality. He's always done it. It's more out of thoughtfulness than lacking confidence. So good to hear, appreciate that feedback. As far as Postecoglou, the story has developed a little bit further overnight. A lot of the journalists that are tap-in merchants, or the guys that wait until the story is nearer completion to mention it, they have come out saying it's basically done. Postecoglou to Tottenham, personal terms won't be an issue, and there's not a lot that Celtic can do because Postecoglou's on a 12-month rolling contract which expires in a couple of weeks. So absent them convincing him to stay and signing a new contract, then it's over to him to decide whether he wants to join Tottenham, and that apparently things are all moving in the right direction and that we should expect some announcement confirming that within the next hours or days, bearing in mind that he's going on holiday tomorrow, according to what he said in the interview. It would be nice to think that we'll get through and get that confirmation before he goes, so that us in the community can then get excited about talking squad rotation, players in, players out for his specific system. According to the reports, the contract length will be 2 years with a year option to extend, which has immediately been taken and used as a stick to hit Daniel Levy over the head with by certain people in the Tottenham community. They're saying if this is supposed to be a project manager, then why has he only been given 2 years? It doesn't really espouse confidence. It looks like Nuno 2.0. And I can understand the argument, but for me personally, I think that those same people would probably then, if he was offered a 5-year contract, they'd probably be saying, why are you offering a 5-year contract to a manager that doesn't have any experience in the Premier League or managing at the highest level, etc., blah, 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 blah. So I think it's just more opportunism than anything else. What I would say is, I don't think 5-year contracts are going to be anywhere near as prevalent as they have been previously. The average tenure of management in the Premier League is dropping so rapidly, it's crazy. It's less than 18 months now. Think back to last season, was it 12 or 13 clubs changed their manager during the season? I think it's just a consequence of two things, really. I think in life generally, there is this kind of on-demand generation where everything that you want it now. You're not prepared to wait. Netflix and Amazon deliveries and Just Eat, all of that kind of experience in life has transitioned people to look at things with very little patience in other areas of life that would traditionally have, earned or commanded a slight more air of patience to it. So I think maybe Premier League clubs changing their manager more frequently than they used to is a little bit because of that, fans lacking patience. But also I think that the consequences to the clubs generally, a failure or a regression in their progress and lack of momentum, financially the impact of that is quite significant, and so clubs are forced into making more kind of snap decisions, knee-jerk reactions, out of duress rather than anything else. Personally, I don't think you'll see too many more 5-year contracts for managers. That's not to say that you won't see long-term contracts given to players in order to circumvent FFP. By the way, just on that, I want to spend a couple of seconds talking about Manuel Ugarte, who last night, the rumours were coming out of Romano that Ugarte, Chelsea and PSG were fighting for Ugarte. Now, about an hour after this particular statement came out, Chelsea were out of the race, PSG had offered more money, and Ugarte is likely to go to PSG. But before that kind of confirmation happened, the story that emerged briefly was that Chelsea, in the pursuit of Manuel Ugarte, had offered an entirely new version of player trading finance structure to Sporting, and that they were offering to have a minority investment into Sporting if it got them over the line in order to sign Manuel Ugarte, which was crazy. And Romano was saying that FIFA and UEFA, etc., are going to have to look into it, because what does it mean? How, sort of picking the bones out of this. Is it just like a sweetener? Like, oh, we'll pay you the 60 million quid for Ugarte, but on top of that, by the way, can we have a good relationship with you? Because we know that you are brilliant at developing sensational youth talent, and so we'd like to have early dibs on that. But it could also be interpreted as another technique that Todd Boehly is creating and innovating to circumvent FFP. Like, remember, the new FFP rules are coming in that are being drip fed in over the next 3 years. They're gentle at first, but by 2026, 70% of your overall revenue is going to be the cap of what you can spend on the combination of agents' fees, player trading, and salaries. And it got me to thinking that, is there other ways that you can circumvent that if you are a club who has an owner where money is not an issue, where they would like to spend a lot more than they are allowed to, essentially? And I was wondering whether or not you could get creative now in order to reduce the amount of money that is exposed to that 70% cap, but still go and buy the players that you want and pay them the salaries that they need. Maybe you could do things like, I won't take I won't pay you the £50 million for the player, but what I'll do instead is I'll give you a £50 million investment for a minority shareholding that, if I don't take the option up, will expire in 3 years. So you're giving them £50 million like a deposit, with the intention, the kind of gentleman's agreement, that you're not going to exercise the option in 3 years. They get to keep the £50 million, but actually they transfer the player to you for free. Like, that technically would still be outside of the FFP rules, but a way to get players in. What about if you were to talk to players and say, can we pay you your salary in a different format so it doesn't look like salary? Can we give you share options in the club, like B options, create a new class of ownership that is that ultimately just pays dividends later on, that will, for all intents and purposes, act as a salary, but not be on the salary side of the business? I don't know, speculating here. I'm going to do a lot more digging into it, but it seems to me like Todd Boehly and Chelsea are incredibly creative with the way that they are accounting for their player trading activities. We saw them last year when they were buying people like Mudryk for 8 or 9 year contracts as a way to amortize their player, so as not to hit the FFP rules quite as significantly as it otherwise would. Maybe we're going to see more and more of these types of shenanigans, and I find all that stuff interesting. Let me know if you do too, and I'll do some more digging and get round to it. Anyway, back to Tottenham. The transfer news and transfer views and clues for you today really are around two specific names. I don't particularly see too much relevance or realism to either of them, but because they're out there, I thought I'd bring them to your attention. First and foremost is Ollie Watkins from Aston Villa. I think he scored 16 goals last season in the Premier League. The vast majority of them came in a very short spell in the second half of the season when Aston Villa were going on that ridiculously good run under Unai Emery. Really talented player, and a player that I'd have absolutely no issues joining Tottenham in a world where we needed a new striker. And of course that particular story is entirely dependent on whether or not Harry Kane leaves Tottenham this summer or next summer and goes to any number of suitors. For me personally, I just don't see Daniel Levy being willing to let him leave to Manchester United. It could happen, I could be wrong. I think it would take a monster bid from United to make it happen. I do think there's a far higher likelihood that if he does go anywhere, then it will be to Real Madrid. I personally don't think that he wants to go abroad just anywhere. I don't think he would go to Bayern Munich or PSG. I think he would want to stay and move, or stay at Tottenham or move to somewhere in the Premier League where he can continue to track down his Premier League record, but also try and win a trophy. But if that doesn't happen, if Daniel Levy refuses to let that happen, then the only place I could really see him wanting to go abroad would be to Real Madrid. And of course, with the news that Benzema has left Real Madrid, they do need a new striker. They might go to any one of the different directions. Rasmus Højlund, they might go to Dusan Vlahovic, Osimhen. But Harry Kane does make a hell of a lot of sense. So I'm not really going to spend too much time worrying about the Ollie Watkins links unless the Harry Kane story picks up momentum, which it likely will over the next several weeks, but we will have to wait and see. But Ollie Watkins would be someone that Tottenham may turn their attention to. Me personally, I would rather Tottenham be a little bit more creative. I see better value in Ivan Toney than I do Ollie Watkins. And whilst Ivan Toney is currently suspended, currently banned from football until January, that might put off other bigger clubs that have a bigger draw than Tottenham from looking at Ivan Toney. And maybe, just maybe, if Daniel Levy did need to pull the trigger or did allow Harry Kane to move abroad to Real Madrid or anywhere else this summer, maybe he could be smarter and steal a march on the other clubs by going and having that conversation with Brentford now, buying him now, and then having him come in and join the ranks in January, which would mean that Tottenham obviously would be without a main core key striker for the first half of this season. But that might be, an undesirable yet logical methodology to overcome the likely gap that we will have to face if we sell Harry Kane this summer and then try and find a replacement that isn't Ivan Toney in the same transfer window. Put that one to one side because it all depends on Harry Kane. What I would say is the other story that is still there to be reviewed is Edmund Tapsoba, Bayer Leverkusen centre-back. Yesterday we spoke about the links to Jonathan Tah, the other centre-back from Leverkusen who has a €20 million release clause. I spoke about him as a good player, very physically dominant, but doesn't necessarily have all of the characteristics, all of the physical attributes that you might want to see from a centre-back. That's not to knock him because no-nonsense centre-backs are still very, very useful and Tottenham really don't have one. So he would have been an improvement on Dyer, Sanchez, etc. anyway. But the other link that we're being linked with today from Bayer Leverkusen is Edmund Tapsoba, or Eddie. I think he's from Burkina Faso and speaks about 6 or 7 different languages, a proper polyglot, speaks English as well as German and his local language, and Spanish and Portuguese, I believe, from when he played in Portugal before Leverkusen. This guy, guys, is an absolute monster. He's 6'4", he's incredibly powerfully built, but he has pace for days, super fast, he's composed, his abilities on the ball are phenomenal. I talked yesterday about the rarity of finding someone that has height, strength, broadness and structure to your frame that also comes with pace and that has the confidence and the composure on the ball to be able to ping passes. This guy he's in the top 5 or 6 percentile for pass completions, but that number is not made up because of him just getting the ball and passing it 3 yards to his centre back like Harry Sideways. This guy is more than confident and more than competent at pinging those balls, not to the same level as like Victor Nelson that I spoke about a couple of days ago, but incredibly talented with the ball at his feet and incredibly gifted physically with the defensive responsibilities that he has to face. Superb in the air. But you know what I like most about him is when I've read the interviews that he's had post games and by people that are kind of following his career, they've asked him what does he see himself as his best asset, his best attribute, and he sees it as his composure. So when you have a guy who's 6'3", 6'4", broad like wings of a plane, who can run the 100 meters faster than a lot of kind of junior sprinters, can play the ball, and yet he thinks that his composure and his steady head is the best asset, it makes you sort of sit up straight and pay attention. I personally don't think that Tottenham have any chance of signing this guy, which is why I'm not going to get my hopes up. The links are there that Tottenham have sent scouts over to Leverkusen to look at both of them over the last half of the season, and that Tottenham are interested. If they can't get Jonathan Tah, then they'll try and get him. Tapsoba, for me, is going to go to one of the biggest clubs in Europe. There are links with him to Arsenal, which is frustrating. There's links with him to Manchester United and Liverpool. There's links to Barcelona and a few other clubs in Germany as well. So I highly doubt he'll end up at Tottenham. But listen, if you can get him, and the supposed target price is about 50 million euros, I'd imagine he'd go for far more than that, because there will be a never-ending list of suitors. He reminds me a little bit of Jeremy Boateng, the Bayern Munich's legend. And if you haven't checked him out, go and check him out. Go on the Y-Scout tour if you've got it. If you don't, just go and look on YouTube. This guy is he's an absolute beast. And for me, having that pace is so important. If you are going to have a Postecoglou system next summer where he wants to play with a higher line, he wants to be able to do that high-intensity press, then you're going to need at least one centre-back who has pace for days, who can get back and recover when the transitions happen and when you lose the ball, which is going to happen. And for me, having a centre-back that has, you know, a ridiculous pace is an essential ingredient. We don't have one at the moment, so if there's any chance at all that Tottenham could get this guy, I'd be all over it, like beans on toast. Let me know your thoughts, guys, whether you know him, like him, or whether you think it's realistic or not. Let me know your thoughts on Ollie Watkins. I personally don't see either of these two happening. Thought I'd bring them to your attention. Let me know about Chelsea's somewhat interesting little mechanism to try and get Manuel Ugarte. Do you see this as a new thing that's going to be emerging in football, where because of the FFP rules, players are looked at in different ways, and innovative clubs can use creative accounting practices to try to find ways to circumvent the rules to get the players that they want? Fascinating, something to discuss. Look out for a live stream this afternoon, guys. I'll let you go. Like, subscribe and comment, and as always, bye bye.